We'll move on from the Cup Series here. We'll come and revisit that later on in the year, see how right we are, if there's any announcements throughout the season, and how wrong we are. And we'll make our predictions later on for what 2022 will look like in maybe a more definite fashion as the season rolls along. So we'll move on to Formula One, and we'll go in Constructors Series or Constructors finishing order from this past season.
Yeah.
So it starts with Mercedes. It's going to end with Williams. So let's start off with Mercedes. Very similar format. We'll go back and forth, and it's the big team. The next generation of Formula One as well coming into 2022. A new car, new aero package, new everything basically over there in Formula One. So there could be a little bit more of a switch up. I mean, this past season, there's been a lot of switch ups, so I don't know how much more switching up they want to do, but there is definitely the possibility of that happening once again in 2022 with rumors, what we've heard, and what people have done this past season in 2020. So we'll start off with Mercedes here. Lewis Hamilton is not signed to a contract for this upcoming season yet, but I imagine that deal will be put together at some point in time over the next couple of months. We heard it may happen before Christmas. That is much that is definitely wrong. But I imagine
literally a month ago as we're recording it.
Exactly. Lewis Hamilton has not yet signed for this upcoming year, but I say that he's going to be around, and I think he's going to be back in 2022 over there at Mercedes. I think he wants to test out the next generation of car. Whether he likes it or not, that could just be a one-year kind of thing. He just seems to be on this one-year kind of contract that he's been on the last couple of seasons now, and I don't see that changing for at least the next two. So I think Lewis Hamilton does come over to Mercedes just stay at Mercedes in 2022. And then to partner him, I've got George Russell, baby. I am not letting this guy go wayside. Valtteri Bottas, I'm sorry. Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more. George Russell, you are coming into Mercedes to partner Lewis Hamilton, and that better be the case, or I will be having a big fit on this show at some point in time if that is not the news that we hear over this next year. George Russell, what a talent this young kid is. He proved himself at the Secure Grand Prix. I don't need anything more to show me that he is ready for this next chapter in his F1 career. He's going to be partnering over there at Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. You heard it here first, folks. I will be losing my mind if this does not happen, because I want to see Russell against Hamilton. I think it would be totally a disservice to the entire F1 fan base community if we don't see this happen at least once. George Russell, the Brit for the British team. You just would love to see it, and I think George Russell is going to be taking that next step. It would be heartbreaking for him if he stays at Williams and doesn't get that shot and they sign Valtteri Bottas for another year. But I've got Hamilton and Russell at Mercedes.
I thought about going bold on this one. I'm not going to lie. I really, really thought about having it Bottas and Russell as the pairing at Mercedes. But I think Hamilton sticks around, as you mentioned, a little bit longer. He doesn't even have the contract signed for this year. But I think he gets that done. It'll be a one-year deal. We'll do the whole thing over again over the summer or over the winter, excuse me. But I think he stays. I think he stays for another year. I think he wants to try out that next gen. I hope he does as well, because that Russell versus Hamilton lineup would be amazing. I've got Russell as the second seat there as well. I think that'll be amazing. I think after this season, there might be some regret from Mercedes to that they didn't go with the gamble and put Russell in that seat right away. And I think Secure showed them a lot. I would be stunned if he's not in a Mercedes going into 2022. I don't think you can hold him back any longer at that point. He's got to be in the Mercedes going into 2022. Otherwise, if I'm Russell and it's 2022 and I'm still not in Mercedes, I'm looking elsewhere, because at some point, you've got to continue on with your career. And Williams has been nice and fine. Going into 2022, looks like they're going to get some upgrades because they're looking to accept some parts from Mercedes as well. But I don't see how Russell can accept returning to Williams for 2022. So I agree with you, and I think Bottas is out at Mercedes in 2022.
Yeah, I was hoping that would be the case for you, because I'm pretty adamant on this, and our season-ending grades for Valtteri Bottas was basically a hint in itself. But George Russell, if they hadn't assigned Bottas to the contract extension already when the Secure Grand Prix had happened, I think they would have made the switch over the offseason. But with contract obligations, they have to try and adhere to them for this upcoming year. So I think they'll get the 1 year done. Valtteri Bottas can leave on his own terms and find a place elsewhere. for 2022, but George Russell's going to make that step up. We move on to Red Bull Racing. Max Verstappen, their golden boy, my favorite driver, I'd have to say, over there in Formula One. I think he's going to be staying there for quite some time unless something miraculous changes over there. He's their main man. He's the future of that team and the current of that team. And then Sergio Perez, the kind of big move over the offseason. He's going to be replacing Alexander Albon for 2021. And I see him staying over there at Red Bull Racing in 2022. It just makes too much sense. They don't really have that one guy, that it guy that is in the pipeline right now that they could say that they want to bring up to Red Bull for 2022. Perez, I'm expecting him to pass with flying colors this season. Partnering Verstappen going to be a nice 1A to 1B for that team. And I think that relationship will continue on in 2022.
Yeah, I think Red Bull needs some driver lineup stability at this point. And even if Perez has a slightly worse season, if he has a disastrous season, then you got to change something, obviously. But I don't think that'll be the case. Verstappen stays. He doesn't jump ship. Perez, I think he'll do a very tidy job as a number 2 there. I think he'll stay there. I don't think that Yuki Tsunoda will show enough in year 1 where you have to put him in that seat right away.
They can't do it again. That's 3 in a row.
Exactly. They can't do it again. I think after this one, they learned their lesson, hopefully at least. And they'll let this kind of next group of Red Bull drivers properly marinate at AlphaTauri. So for me, Perez, Verstappen, relatively easy pick on that one.
For sure. 2 for 2 in terms of teams thus far. Who do you have for McLaren in 2022? The iconic duo of Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo for 2021. Do you see it changing or staying that way?
No, I think this one's easy as well. Ricciardo, Norris, there's no reason for either of them to change it up at this point. Ricciardo, some people have criticized the move now, moving on from Renault, now Alpine. I still like the move, especially when you look at McLaren going to the Mercedes engines and everything like that. I really like the future there for Ricciardo with McLaren, and same for Norris. He's been a McLaren development driver for forever. He's now at the team, and I don't see him moving on either. So I think that's going to be a very fun lineup. I don't know if it's going to be like as crazy fun as some people think, but I think it's going to be an extremely, extremely talented one on the track at the very least. So I've got Ricciardo, Norris staying for McLaren.
I do as well. I don't think that they can break that up after one season unless something goes disastrously wrong.
Yeah.
It seems like a really good duo to move forward with the future. A prominent and deserving caliber driver in Ricciardo. And then a future driver there in Lando Norris that is just taking the world by storm in terms of everything on and off the track. He's just a great person for the sport. McLaren would be foolish to try and get rid of either of those guys for 2022. They need foundation over there. Lando Norris will be in his 4th year of Formula One by then as well. So he'll know what he's doing behind the wheel of a car. And I'm pretty would it be his 4th year? Yes, 4th year. Yes, it would. That's pretty crazy to say. Wow, we're getting old, man. We're getting old. Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo over there at McLaren, and then move on here to Aston Martin. Kyle, now the newly rebranded team, not Racing Point anymore. Force India seems like a lifetime ago. We've got Aston Martin over there. So who do you have for the green livery painted car for 2022?
Well, there's one we know for sure, and that's Lance Stroll, because it's going to take a lot to get him away from that team at this point, and they showed that based off of dropping Sergio Perez last season. And I don't think that they bring in Sebastian Vettel in a big name signing and drop him after one season either. I think that Vettel is going to return to form. I don't know how high up he'll be in the standings, but I think he'll be rejuvenated. He'll have that interest level again at Aston Martin. It's not going to be the tire fire that was Ferrari these last couple of seasons. So I like Vettel at Aston Martin. I think Stroll stays as the lineup going into 2022.
I have the same thing. It just makes the most sense. Sebastian Vettel. They would not bring him in for just 1 year and then just kick him to the curb. Lance Stroll, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon either until Lawrence Stroll has no real part in that team or Lance Stroll has done something significantly wrong. I don't see him leaving that team anytime soon. So it makes sense there. So we are 4 for 4 as we get to the near the midway point of the F1 grid. And maybe there could be a switch up here, maybe not, but we move on to Alpine F1 team, not Renault anymore, obviously going over to that newly rebranded team as well for 2021. That'll be the same way in 2022. Fernando Alonso makes his return to the sport this upcoming season, signed a multi-year deal. I have him returning to Alpine in 2022. He's on a 2-year contract. It will probably be his last year in Formula One then in 2022. I think they won't be letting Fernando Alonso go just because of the name that he is, and I think he'll be pretty damn good for that team as well. But then to partner him, I do have a switch up here. I do think Esteban Ocon is leaving the team. I know that Frenchman kind of vibe that they're going for. They want French drivers, but I think they replace him with another French driver, and that's going to be Pierre Gasly. The signs are there. It's been kind of the stars are aligning for that to take shape. It doesn't make sense for Pierre Gasly to go any higher in the Red Bull rankings. It didn't work out for him at the main team in Red Bull. He's going to have to look elsewhere for a ride if he wants to get more competitive in the sport, and I think that starts with Alpine F1 team. Esteban Ocon will probably play second fiddle to Fernando Alonso, and even if he doesn't, I could see Esteban Ocon getting let go because he is on a 1-year contract here for that team. So I think Pierre Gasly fits that mold. A French driver leaving the team for a French driver that's going to be coming in. Pierre Gasly's shown all the signs at AlphaTauri that he is ready for this next step, and I see that happening in 2022.
Yeah, this is one that I struggled with a little bit because if it wasn't for that second year on Alonso's contract, I would have had a different lineup. But he's got that second year, and he's a high-profile driver, and for all those reasons, he's going to stay. It's going to take a lot for him to leave a year early for the contract. And although I think that it might not go so well for Alonso at Alpine, I think he stays in 2022, and partnering him as well. I do have Pierre Gasly. I really, really, really wanted to do Gasly and Ocon, but that second year of Alonso's contract just made it too difficult to try and work it in. So I have Alonso Gasly at Alpine. As you mentioned, Pierre Gasly, his time's up at AlphaTauri. He's got to find somewhere else to go after the season, I think. And when you look at the other teams higher up on the grid, we've got Mercedes, Red Bull, McLaren, and Aston Martin, all with fairly obvious moves to make. He's not going to be going to any of those. And so the obvious tie to make is the French team there in Alpine, who is going to French colors and could be in the search for a new French driver. So it makes a lot of sense. Ocon, I really wanted to keep him at that team, but I just couldn't find a way to make it fit. So I am in agreement with Alonso and Gasly at Alpine in 2022.
Exactly. The second year on that Alonso contract really messes things up if they were ever going to think about doing that dual French French team. I think that they could potentially come back to that in 2023 if Ocon is still around in that kind of stable, but that remains to be seen down the road.
Okay.
Ferrari, what have you got over there for the prancing horses?
For starters, it's insane that we're talking about Ferrari this late.
I know.
This is insane. And hopefully going into our 2023 predictions, we're talking about the much higher on the grid. But this is an easy one as well. Leclerc, Sainz. I really, Future. Especially with Charles Leclerc there, it's going to take a lot for him to leave Ferrari. And honestly, maybe if it's more the same from this past season, maybe he ends up doing something there. But I think Leclerc's there for the long haul. And Sainz, he's a very talented driver. He's going to be a great, great challenge for Leclerc there. And when you look at the Ferrari development path, there's nobody immediately to step up into that seat. You look Giovinazzi, I don't think he's going to be a Ferrari driver. You look Mick Schumacher, he's just making his debut. And Callum Ilott is probably the third one in that pecking order, and he's not even racing in a series next year. So when you look at things, Leclerc, Sainz, that's a pretty easy one for me to keep as a driver lineup for Ferrari in 2022.
Yeah, about the same thing. Leclerc, Sainz, that's the future of that team. They're two excellent race car drivers, and I'm very, very excited to see what the potential of this duo has in store for the next 2 seasons now, with them partnering each other for at least that long of a period of time. We move on to AlphaTauri. We both have Pierre Gasly leaving the team, which means that there's at least one vacant seat over there at this Red Bull Junior team. Is there a second? We'll see. What have you got for AlphaTauri in 2022?
Well, the easy one is the first one, and that's Yuki Tsunoda. Yes. I feel very, very confident that he'll be there for his second season. I don't think he gets the call up to Red Bull, and I don't think he gets the sack after his first year either. But that second seat is a very, very interesting one because I think it comes down to 2 drivers. And the obvious one is Alexander Albon, who is currently the Red Bull reserve driver, is not getting the same opportunity that Pierre Gasly did after being let go from the main team at Red Bull, where Gasly went back down to AlphaTauri because it happened mid-season. Alex Albon, it's happening at the end of the season, and there's no seat for him because Yuki Tsunoda is getting the call to AlphaTauri. But I don't have Alex Albon getting the second seat at AlphaTauri. I think it's just a terrible luck situation for Alex Albon there. But there's another Red Bull development driver coming up the pipeline that's equally as interesting as Yuki Tsunoda. He's making his full-time F2 season debut this year with, I think it's High Tech. I think that was announced recently. I think he's going to have a very strong season there, and he's going to get the call up after one full season in F2, similar to Tsunoda to AlphaTauri, and that's Juri Vips, the Estonian driver. He's been in the Red Bull program for a while now. For a while, he was the guy thought of higher than Yuki Tsunoda, but because of some things and how it went this past season, Tsunoda's the one getting the call to AlphaTauri this season. I think Vips gets that call into 2022. I think he's going to have a strong season in F2, and Red Bull then partners two potential future drivers at that program as well, and kind of restabilizes that Red Bull program. Keep Tsunoda and Vips at AlphaTauri for at least a couple seasons, maybe 3 or maybe even more, who knows. And then when they're officially ready, move them on up to Red Bull. So I've got Tsunoda and Vips at AlphaTauri.
I have Tsunoda and I have Alexander Albon.
Okay.
I just couldn't do it to him. I just don't.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be absolutely brutal if he does not get that seat in 2022. It would be an absolute shame if he does not get that second chance that Pierre Gasly did. And look what he's done with that second chance. I think Alexander Albon could do something equally as great as what Pierre Gasly's done. It's just a shame how everything's worked out for him over the past year and a half or so. And I hope he does get that second chance because I do think he's deserving of it. Vips is definitely an intriguing one, though. If you're going to look at somebody for that seat, you probably look at him just because they're not going to fill anybody else other than a Red Bull junior driver or somebody within the Red Bull stable over there for AlphaTauri for 2022 at least. So I'm going with Albon. You're going with Vips. It makes sense either way. I hope it's either one of them, to be honest. I'm hoping more so for Albon just for his own sake because I think he does need that second chance. But Vips would definitely be a move for the future over there for Red Bull.
Yeah, when I look at the situation, it's kind of the same thinking with Gasly and why Gasly, we both think he moves on from AlphaTauri this year, is there's no further future at Red Bull after the way that things went at the main team. And it's not to the same extent with Alex Albon, but you look at Yuki Tsunoda coming along, you look at Juri Vips coming down the pipeline, and realistically, what are the odds of Alex Albon getting back to the main team? I'd put them fairly low. So when I'm Red Bull, and if Juri Vips has a season that I'm expecting of him at F2, what's better for you long term, to get the prospect that might end up being a number 2 driver for you at your main team in the future, or getting Alex Albon back in a seat for him to prove he's good again and then move to somebody else's team? So it's an unfortunate reality. If Vips finishes outside the top 5 in F2, I think that's Albon's seat. But if Vips finishes in the top 5 in F2 in his rookie season, I think there's a pretty strong chance he ends up at AlphaTauri. But that's going to be a fun storyline to follow this year because Vip's performance is going to directly impact whether Albon gets that second chance in F1.
Yeah, for sure. It could go either way. That's a 50-50. That's a coin flip right now.
Yeah, same for me.
We'll see what happens with that entire Red Bull stable. Remember, they're not going to be with Honda anymore after this next season as well. So we'll see if that has any sort of play with the engine manufacturer and if they want to go with some sort of nationality route for that second seat at AlphaTauri. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Is there any Estonian engine makers? Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to do a little bit more research on that if that is going to be the case. But I've got Albon, you got Juri Vips, and we've both got Yuki Tsunoda over there at AlphaTauri in 2022. We move on to Alfa Romeo here, Kyle. An interesting one, to say the least, just based off of some rumors that have happened a little bit over the offseason and who we've got leaving some certain teams as well. So what are you looking at for Alfa Romeo in 2022?
Wow. Alfa Romeo in its current form is partially at least a Ferrari development team. It's a Ferrari team. One seat is their own choosing. The other seat is a Ferrari development driver. But this past season, a lot has been made of the fact that Renault and now Alpine put Fernando Alonso in that seat over the pipeline of drivers that they have coming up in the Renault driver junior program, whether it's Guan Yu Zhou or Christian Lundgaard, or looking down into the future, somebody like Oscar Piastri that fills a seat that a potential Renault junior could fill. And so there's an interesting rumor floating around that Alfa Romeo leaves the sport and the team becomes Sauber again. And I think that's got a lot of validity to it when I look at the current situation in F1 and the fact that Callum Ilott didn't end up at Sauber. That's interesting to me as well. So here's what I got. I've got Alfa Romeo leaves Sauber and they become a Renault junior, essentially team. When I look at how everything breaks down, Haas and Ferrari, they've got that. Williams and Mercedes, they've got that. Renault doesn't have that. So I think that they might jump on this opportunity with Sauber and work something there, because they've got some talented drivers coming up. As I mentioned, Guan Yu Zhou, Christian Lundgaard, and the F3 champion Oscar Piastri. Those three are all Renault drivers. And if they've only got 2 seats in F1 and it's the main team, there's not a lot for them to go to. So I'm going to say Sauber becomes a Renault junior team. And here's where it gets interesting, because I've got a full driver lineup change. I'm going to say Kimi Räikkönen retires. I'm going to say Antonio Giovinazzi becomes the Ferrari reserve driver. And so at Sauber, I've got Esteban Ocon going to that team, staying in the Renault family, essentially. So when Alonso essentially retires after 2022, which we would all anticipate, he maybe makes that jump back up to Alpine, or maybe the second driver here makes that jump. And I'm going with Christian Lundgaard. He's, I think, probably the top prospect right now in the Renault program of junior drivers. Guan Yu Zhou kind of stagnated this past season in F2, whereas Christian Lundgaard was comparable in performance. He's 2 years younger, and it was his first season in F2. There's the wild card, of course, in Oscar Piastri, who's stepping into Prima, who just won the championship with Mick Schumacher. He's going to be paired alongside Robert Schwartzman. But when I look at things here, I think Piastri saying he's going to do it in one season after just winning F3 is a lot for me. So I'm going to say Lundgaard makes a jump up to the renamed Sauber with Esteban Ocon as the new Renault team.
Okay, very similar, I have to say, Kyle. Very, very similar.
Okay.
I went with the rumor as well. I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think Ferrari needs to have 2 junior programs essentially there with Alfa Romeo.
It just makes Haas. Too much sense.
It makes exactly. Renault needs that kind of B team like Red Bull, like Mercedes has with Williams, and with like Ferrari has now, I think, with Haas come 2022 time. So for me, very similar. I've got Esteban Ocon gets the demotion from Alpine. I made that tie. It makes the most sense for him to be dropped, but stay in that Renault stable to come back to you once Fernando Alonso leaves, if they want to do that. Or if Esteban Ocon wants to leave somewhere else, he could go back to the Mercedes side of things and find something there, because he's got links basically everywhere. This guy, he's gone from every which way, it feels like, for Esteban Ocon. He can't find that stability that he's probably looking for. And I think that continues probably in 2022. So he's going to end up at Sauber. And then to partner him, I know they're wanting to go with a little bit of a junior program, but I think they're going to come back to a little bit of a familiar face with this one. I'm going to say Nico Hülkenberg makes his return to the F1 grid. I know Christian Lundgaard looks fantastic in F2. He's going to be one guy for the championship, but Hülkenberg has just been that great reserve driver for this past year. He's wanting to come back. He just hasn't found that opportunity. I think he comes back to that Renault stable, goes back to Sauber as well, a former team of his. I think there's a great storyline there, a great connection, familiar faces. It would be a great inaugural season kind of back for Sauber as well as its current form. Having a future driver there as Esteban Ocon, and then a mainstay that we all love in Nico Hülkenberg. It would be great branding, great sponsorship. It would just be a great duo, I feel like, across the board. It should have been the duo maybe even for Renault when they were in its old state, when it was before everything that happened over there at that team. Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, I think would be a great partnership for Sauber. I think they're going to wait maybe 1 year more on someone like the F2 guys, because I don't want to rush these guys too quickly into a new generation of cars. far. I think Nico Hulkenberg would be a great baseline guy to try and find you something with performance, sending a rookie in there. We'll see what Haas does in terms of that for this season and how well they do. But I think it would just be a bit too much to put Ocon and then maybe someone like Lundgaard, even if Piastri turns out to be something spectacular in F2. I think it'd be just rushing them a bit too much. So I'm going to stick with Nico Hulkenberg and Esteban Ocon over there at Sauber.
I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just got a funny feeling. I really want this German guy back on the grid, the Hulk, man. How can you not want the Hulk for your team? I don't feel confident in that one at all, but it's more of a fan favorite kind of move. I feel like if they're going to go with somebody,
mix those in too. So
yeah, I'm interested to see what happens over there with that entire duo, because it makes too much sense for them to not do this, and I hope it does come to fruition, because I don't know honestly what they're going to do if it doesn't actually happen, because I think Raikkonen is going to be departing the sport. It's just his time has come up, and there's too many young talent that is going to be pressing on him to get that last seat there over there at the newly rebranded Sauber team. So we move into the final two here, Kyle. We've got Haas and Williams. We'll start off with the newly kind of named Ferrari Junior team, I guess, here with Haas F1 team. I'm going with a young lineup once again. Mick Schumacher, he's their future star there. He's going to have a pretty decent rookie season. I'd say he's going to outshine Mazepin. I hope so. At least that would be the case. But Mick Schumacher is going to be one to keep your eye on this season. And then to partner him, very similarly, I have Antonio Giovinazzi going as the reserve driver for this organization or this team, whether he goes to Ferrari, Haas, whatever it may be. But he's going to be with the Ferrari camp, but just in a reserve driver role. And to partner Mick Schumacher, I'm going with Callum Ilott. There's no way they could keep him on the sidelines for another season. It would just be a disservice to the young guy. He did everything right in F2, just didn't quite get the shot. Mazepin brings in a lot of funding. I understand that. This is probably more of a biased move, honestly. I just don't want him in the sport for 2022. I want Callum Ilott in there. It's, widely known across the media that this isn't a popular move, what Haas did with putting Mazepin in there, and I hope that they recognize that Mazepin maybe does something this season. I hope that doesn't happen, obviously. Hopefully he turns it around in terms of his actions on and off the track, but I hope Callum Ilott gets this shot, and this seems like the most likely place for him to land if he's going to be landing anywhere in on the F1 grid. Very similar to Giovinazzi taking that year off, didn't quite get that shot in Formula One, now gets that opportunity here and gets the second Haas seat.
Yeah, this is one that I find very interesting, because if they do become that single Ferrari development team, Mick Schumacher is staying no matter what. But if they become that Ferrari development team, is there enough money that comes with that where he can replace Mazepin in that second seat, even though he does have a second year on that contract, and replace him with somebody like Ilott? That's the big question for me, because I want to put Ilott. There's also Robert Schwartzman coming up, who could very easily go out and win F2, and then where does he go? Like, there's a lot of Ferrari guys coming up. I'm still gonna stay with Mazepin in that second seat, just because of the money he brings. He's already got the contract in place. I really hope that's not the case. I would love to see the guy kick to the curb, hell, mid-season, and put Ilott in the seat or something. I just don't think it's – I'm trying to think with my brain and not my heart here, essentially. And if Haas is fighting through it already and they haven't figured out something to get rid of him already, I feel like they might be in it for the long haul. I'm hoping that things might change if they become the single Ferrari development team, but it's Formula One, money talks. We've seen that time and time again, so I'm not holding out hope.
Yeah, I I went with my heart. You went with your head. Like I think either way, I don't know. Just
we might
frustrating.
have to pop some champagne or something if Mazepin is out. That's all I'm going to say.
We pop in a lot of champagne if some things go right over this next season. Hopefully I'm back in Toronto. Hopefully there's a lot of different things happen over this next year. But Haas is definitely an interesting storyline. A lot of these backmarker teams are going to be so integral to the silly season stuff that they're going to be doing over there for 2022. These prospects, I mean, I just don't know where all these young guys are going to go.
So many young guys.
Because you've got young guys already that are prominent. Lando Norris. I mean, Carlos Sainz isn't going to go anywhere. George Russell, Max Verstappen, Daniel Ricciardo. I don't see him going anywhere really anytime soon. Esteban Ocon. Like, you've got some really talented young guys, and you're going to have to kick some of these guys that are veterans of the sport, probably deserving of a seat. But if they want these younger faces, I mean, this is just going to get nuts, even more crazy over the next 2, 3, 4 years as more and more of these young guys just prove themselves in the lower series. So the talent never stops in motorsports, and I think that's the revolving door that we keep on finding ourselves in. Feels like the sweet life of Zach and Cody when they keep on going around in the revolving door at the entrance. We just keep on coming back to it. It just never stops turning. But we're at the end here, Kyle. One last team for the 2022 driver predictions, and that is with Williams, the Mercedes B team. A lot of different things could go on here. We've got George Russell both moving up to Mercedes to take over for Valtteri Bottas. So that leaves one vacant seat open. Is there potentially two here? What do you have for the final team for the 2022 F1 grid?
I'll start by saying something that I wanted to fit in here. If money wasn't a thing and Williams didn't need some extra funding or anything like that, I really, really, really wanted to toss Esteban Ocon here.
Okay.
Because of the Mercedes ties. I really wanted to do it.
I was really, really close. Because if he gets kicked out of Renault, maybe he says, I'm done. I don't want to be with Renault. And he comes here. I think that is definitely a possibility. But I was very
And then you eye up that Mercedes seat down the road or something like that. I don't
know. Exactly.
So I really wanted to do that, but I couldn't make it work because of the money that's involved.
It does freak me out how like-minded we are on some of these things, and we just are like, nope, we can't do it. No.
So I think there's one that makes a lot of sense for everybody involved. When you look at Russell going up to Mercedes, it leaves Bottas out of a seat. He used to be at Williams. You look at going forwards, it's under different ownership. In 2022, they're going to be taking more parts from Mercedes. They're going to be straying away from that kind of, it's only us, we're going to do our own things. It's not going to be one of these works teams or anything like that. So I think Bottas returns to Williams. I think he stays on the F1 grid. He stays in that Mercedes camp kind of, but he goes back to Williams and he's going to help that team progress back up the grid, because we saw in his Williams days, he was very strong there. It's been at Mercedes where he hasn't been able to reach that next level. But I think going back down to Williams, I think that's more of the team that fits where he's at essentially in his career. He can be the clear number one. He doesn't have to worry about challenging with a Lewis Hamilton. And he can help that team develop back. And partnering him, I have Nicholas Latifi staying there because money talks. And I really wanted to have Bottas and Ocon there and then have them battle it out for like a Mercedes seat down the road when Hamilton retires. But I couldn't quite make it work because of the money, because that is quite the expensive driver pairing to have Bottas and Ocon. So I went Bottas, Latifi. And I feel like if when Russell gets the call up, I feel like that's the most likely scenario. If Ocon decides to not stay in the Renault camp, if the Sauber thing doesn't happen, I could easily see him going to Williams. If Bottas doesn't want to go down to Williams, or if he leaves the sport entirely, something like that, some different situations could happen here. But I feel fairly confident in that pair of moves there with Mercedes and Williams.
Yeah, I think they're just doing a trade, to be honest. Russell for Bottas, and then I have the same thing. I think Latifi, like you said, money talks, and this is a very big factor in how a lot of these guys get their rides. But not to say that talent isn't a huge part of it as well, but money is an excruciating
Latifi
factor.
Finished second in F2, and it was, I think, his third or fourth year in the championship. So it's not like it was one of these first year sensations or anything like that.
Yeah.
But he's a decent driver. He brings a lot of money. As long as he's not doing stupid stuff, I think it's perfectly fine. Maybe he develops the season, or maybe he tanks the season and they have to go somewhere else. But when you look at the Mercedes pipeline, there's not that next prospect that really needs to make that jump up.
Exactly.
I'd love to see something like Jamie Chadwick or something like that with the former ties that they have, but I just don't think that's realistic at this point. Bottas Latifi seems like the safe pick there.
I will say I am more confident in the Bottas pick than Latifi, because they could just go off the board with trying to get Latifi out of there.
Or there's somebody else that has money.
Exactly. But I think Bottas going back down to Williams makes the most sense. He stays in the Mercedes camp if he ever gets that call back up. Exactly. It's not where you want to be, of course. He'd want to be up there with Mercedes, but he just hasn't done enough. Like we've talked about that consistently on this show. And George Russell is the next big thing in Formula One. Let's be honest. I mean, this kid is going to be a superstar. in a matter of years. It's not gonna take long for him to reach the heights that we
Hopefully too,
expect.
based off of our count.
Exactly. Very similar kind of lineups here for us, Kyle, across the board.
Yeah.
Latifi and Bottas for myself there. So out of a ride in 2022, I've got Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, and Mazepin. Those are my three that I think are going to be on the way out. Then the rest kind of stays internal. I don't see any F2 guys coming up for myself, at least for 2022. I think it would be a bit of a rush to maybe put them up, but there always is a prospect or two that makes their way up into Formula One. I just think that we've had such a prospect craze the past couple of seasons that we may take a step back from that and just enjoy what we have on the current grid itself. Maybe the next big thing in F2 is not always the right choice. I mean, look at Nick DeVries. He didn't get the call up and he won the F2 championship. Like, you can't have every single person make their way up to Formula One. It's just not realistic. So I went with more of an internal way. I think Nico Hülkenberg was more of a fan favorite move, but I could totally see Christian Lundgaard going in there for Sauber or whatever they decide to do with that team if they stay with Alfa Romeo. Who knows?
If it stays with Alfa Romeo, maybe we see Giovinazzi and Islet there, Schwartzman and Islet. Like, there's a lot of different. I think the Alfa Romeo Sauber thing is the big thing coming into this year. If Alfa Romeo stays, if they stay with Ferrari, and then if they leave, the ramifications of that, because that can impact 2, 3, 4 different names here. In silly season and in different prospects projections to F1. Yeah,
if Alfa Romeo stays, you've got maybe Ilott and Giovinazzi, like you said, or Ilott and Schwartzman, whatever they decide to do. But then, Esteban Ocon maybe out of a ride. Then you look at the Williams thing. Maybe that's the opportunity that he's looking for.
And then that's the route.
There's a total different chain of things that could happen here, but they all have different things that connect them to each place. It's not all over the place. I feel like this upcoming season, a lot of it is kind of staying pat, but these drivers that could be on the move, they make sense in going to certain destinations more than others. And we'll see how right or how wrong we are. We will be revisiting this as the season goes along, but very similar on the Formula One side of things, more so than the NASCAR side of things. But we have a lot of different similarities, a lot of
there's a lot more options on the NASCAR side too. So
very, very true. But we're very like-minded with this stuff, and it does really blow my mind. It is scary. But that does it for the silly season predictions on NASCAR and Formula One. Any final thoughts before we wrap up today's episode, Kyle?
Oh, I can't wait to see how wrong we are. If I think about the way that my head was at 1 year ago in terms of silly season stuff and where it's all played out 1 year later, it's pretty crazy. So 1 year ago, we were thinking it was like a sure thing that Keselowski was out at Penske and Kyle Larson and where he would go. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
A year, it's 365 days is literally nothing. It feels like it's just so much can happen in a year. I mean, it's been as clear as any this past year what can happen in a year. I'm happy that we got to do this though. It was a fun episode.
This was fun.
This is always a great thing to predict and see how right or how wrong you are. It just it's all for fun and games, and we'll see who's more right, who's more wrong, if we're all wrong, and which could be entirely true. But we've got a fun rest of the week in store. We've got the Rolex 24 preview coming up later on this week, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Green Flag, at The Green Flag Pod on Twitter as well. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it as well. All the links to the social channels will be in the description. For this episode, I've been Lukas Wacker. He's been Kyle Cushman. Signing off for now. We will talk to you later this week to preview the Rolex 24.